Good morning, everyone. Today I wanted to talk about UV mapping. Nobody's a favorite subject, I know, but I think I've found a way to do it that is making it kind of fun. So everybody knows what pain UV mapping can be, and especially if you got kind of complex models like this one, it can take quite a long time before you have made your UV map. So sometimes it's you're in the situation where the actual sculpt can be done in a day or two, but the UV mapping can take up to 4 or 5 days or even longer sometimes. So I've tried pretty much all of the UV mapping software out there, and most of them are lacking in one way or another. So you got your basic UV mappers like the ones you find in Maya, Blender, 3D Studio Max, etc. Now, these worked quite good for a long time, but they're extremely basic and very, very frustrating and boring to work with, and I actually don't like them at all. Now, then there is a suite of external UV mapping tools that promises quite a lot, and they work often really good for low-res objects, but as soon as you get into photogrammetry objects that has got a couple of thousand of polygons, or sometimes even millions, they don't have a chance. So the two softwares that I found to be really, really useful is Houdini with its procedural UV mapping. That can be super powerful if you set it up correctly, which can be a bit of a challenge. If you don't know what you're doing, it's not going to do you much good. But once you know and can master it, it's super powerful for a lot of things, but not all the things. And what I found the best way to unwrap things like this is actually to be found in 3DCoat. It has a absolutely fantastic little UV mapping engine that it's a bit of a dark horse. I don't think many people have heard about it, but once I got into it, I absolutely loved it. And that's what I'm going to show today, how to get started with that UV mapping, because it's actually perfect for photogrammetry UV mapping, where you got complex shapes, irregular shapes, lots of details and things that you would struggle in other programs to do. And I'll show you how easy it is to get it done. So I'm not going to use this model here. I have another scene just because it's a little bit simpler. So we can take this one here. So this is an old rotten stump, also from the Fanal forest. You need these kind of objects as well to fill in. So this is the original scan of a rotting stump. And we can take a close look here to what it entails. That's the original. This is the meshed version with a normal map on. Let's quickly just switch over to the color map. And we can also see, if I click on the texture there, we can see this is the finished UV mapped texture. So this is all UV mapped in 3DCoat. And if I go to the normal texture here, you can clearly see all the little islands that I have cut up. And this can be done under 1 hour, so it can be very, very efficient to do it like this. I also have a high-res model here to transfer the normal details over. So I kind of like to do that in Reality Scan because it's very efficient to transfer maps and things in Reality Scan. Actually, it's one of the better softwares for doing that. But today we're going to dive into the UV mapping. So let's open this up in 3DCoat and I'll show you how that software handles UVs. Let's fire up 3DCoat, the latest version, 2025.10. And everybody who has worked with 3DCoat, you know it's kind of confusing with all these rooms and options, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger for every version that's released. Now, the thing with 3DCoat is that you don't have to know everything about the program. You just have to concentrate on the things that you actually need to use. So that's why it's kind of easy with this startup menu here and just diving into the different rooms that you have. So in this case, we're going to go into the UV room. So if you find the UV map mesh here and click it, and then we're going to go to one of the meshes I have. I have one here called quads because I have one quads and one triangles. So there are two versions of this, and there are two ways of UV mapping that I'm going to show you. So you're met with this little dialog here, and what you got to do is where it says UV map type, it's auto mapping. You're not going to use this because it will do 3DCoat's internal automatic mapping. This is the classic automatic mapping that many softwares have. Here it's very, very slow, and it's not always that useful to use. So I will set this to keep UV, which will import the model without any UVs because there are no UVs. And I will set this to 8K as well. Now the only thing that this does is that the higher the resolution is, the more tightly packed the little UV islands are going to be. So we just click OK and wait for it to do its thing. You get a couple of prompts. You can just click OK, and the mesh is in. Now normally, and this used to be the case as well, you would jump into the UV room here. For some reason now it starts in the painting room and it looks like this. So it's a little bit odd. But all you got to do is click the UV, and now you're in the UV room. And here you can see it's a remeshed model from ZBrush. So it got nice quads and loops going around, but as it is in ZBrush, they can sometimes be a little bit twisted and things. But this is a very good start, and it's really nice for UV mapping. So I'm gonna dive right into it and explain how to get it done. So you get your model here. Here, eventually your UV map is going to show up, and to the left here you got all your tools. And here you also can turn the visibility on and off. Now this, you could have many objects here getting imported, but at the moment there's only this one. So up here, let's start with the UV modes. So these are the tools you use to cut up the model. So this is a 3D cutting system. There are a couple of other softwares that does it kind of like this. Now, in my opinion, 3DCoat does it best. So you have edge loops, UV path, and mark seams. These are the three ones to focus on for now. So I'm not going to do an absolute deep dive into it. It's just going to be so you can get started and use it. Yeah, you're going to be able to use it to 100%. But there are certain things. There are a lot of tools here, and many of them are just for specialist uses whenever you need them. But let's see what these ones does. So edge loops is the best one to start with if you got a model in quads with loops. So what it does, you can see it finds all the edge loops here, and we're going to create seams. So we're going to split up this model in what we think are like natural cuts. And here you can see this is the twistiness that you get from ZBrush, but it still works fine. You right control click to remove a seam, and you just click to get a seam in there. So what you got to do is just find these loops and create these islands here. So once you got an island, if you hover over it, it's not unwrapped yet. You see there's nothing there still, but if you hover over it, it would do some kind of a quick unwrap. And you can see where you're at. So you see, okay, that's a pretty good. There are no twists in anywhere in the island here. So that's probably a good thing. But then you can see this part here needs a lot more work. So you just keep on cutting up. And you get pretty far with just this tool. So you just have to work a little bit clever. Go like, okay, that's fine. That's nice. See, it unwraps nice. As long as there's no overlap. And you can see the color coding there is green-ish is what you want to. And then you got blue and you got red. So red would be that they're a little bit too big, and blue that they're a little bit too small. But when it looks like this, it's just fine. You don't have to think too much about it. Just keep it within some kind of a range. So this is as easy as it is. You can see it's super responsive. The whole thing just works really, really nicely, and I'm super happy with it. See, they've got a bit of a twist there, so we might go in and cut this thing up. Another useful tool is the UV path. So if I click that one, you can see I get a little dot. Now this is a way to cut this up a little bit more customized. So you, instead of just going for the loops, you will get a path like this. And then when you're done, you click enter, and you can see there is a bit of a ball here. This is the starting point. If you don't want to start from here, you just click ESC to remove it, and then you can start cutting up from somewhere else. So let's see, we go here, click enter. So this is really good, especially if you have a very dense mesh with millions of polygons and there's no way to use the loops. I usually would go in and use this tool. It's also kind of fun to use. And what makes it fun is that it's just so responsive and it just works really, really nice. You don't get any of these lag or anything like that. You can just keep on working like you want, just keep on cutting. So it's not bad at all for UV mapping. You can just get a cup of coffee, sit and do this for an hour, and then you're actually done. So let's see, we go here a bit. Now there are some options here as well. So you got the maximize straightness and path length. I quite often will turn off the maximize straightness because I think you get better lines with this. If you have the maximize straightness on, it will try to try to make these a little bit of a detour just to keep it straight, which is not always what you want. Sometimes it might be, but for me, usually it's not really what I'm looking for. Control Z to just undo and go back. So I often click that off, and then it will get more of a direct path, and that's usually what I want. And in order to get the full loop, you have to click not on the next one there. You have to click outside and then drag it. Then you get the loop. So a little bit clunky there. Also, let's say we go here. And if you want to insert, you just click where it is, and then you can drag it around, and you can. So very, very efficient tool, and then keep on going. So a third option you have is the mark seams. It's a little bit like the edge loop, but you do one at a time normally. So this is for more detailed work, and usually you can control click if you want to remove. So sometimes you will have little accidental floaters like this, and this one comes into handy. You just control click it and remove it. But you can also go shift and you get the full loop in as well. So it's a multi-purpose tool, like so. But these are the three that are usable, and this will just be join clusters will be it's a kind of a delete tool. There we go. I have now cut up the whole model, put it into little patches, and if I go over it, you can see they're all unwrapping nicely. So now what you have to do is go down to the commands and hit the unwrap button. So I'm going to do that, and we just wait. It's going to update down here in the corner. So let's see where it zoom in. And that's the unwrapped. So you get a very nice unwrap and a UV layout. And if you don't find any errors on it, you could call it a day, and this would be done. Now what could happen here is that you might find up in the corner, right about here, there will be like tiny little islands let's say, one polygon islands if you made some mistakes, and then you have to find those and patch them in and do another unwrap. But otherwise, I think this is pretty much done. Now, what I like to do before I call it quits is maybe just select some, let's say this one with a lot of red in it, and you can go down to the relax. And if I hit that one, you'll see it's now gonna relax some of those polygons to give them a little bit more equal space. Not really necessary to do, but it can be a nice thing to do, especially if it's a little bit too much red. Now, let's talk a little bit about the unwrap situation as well. So here, in this here where they're selected, you have different types of UV unwrapping algorithms. So the goo to goo is the default one. This is 3DCoat's own, and it mostly does a very good job. I would use that in 99% of all situations. You have an angle based as well. Let's choose one here. Let's take this one, for instance. So this is the goo to goo unwrapping, and the angle based would also work fine, but there are definitely certain scenarios where one works a little bit better than the other, so you have to try that. And then you got this one, LSCM, least squares, conformal maps. Now this one is creating a very different situation, and it's better for more boxy, planar islands. And you also have this planar thing here, so that would just do a planar projection right down. And then what you can do is, if that's what you need, and sometimes this is what you need, does the best thing, you can just go in and relax it to get rid of these creases that you would get otherwise. So there is quite a lot of few little extra tools here that you can use. However, what I've just shown you is all you need to get a very complicated model unwrapped. So selected clear. Okay, so now let's say it is actually finished. We can go down to the commands here. There's one thing you have to do before you export it, and that's apply the model, or apply the UV map to the model. So one of the tricks that 3DCoat has is that this here, the cutting up with the seams, and this is not yet an actual UV map. Now that might sound strange, and it is a bit strange, and I can't say I actually understand what's going on, but this is what makes it quite fast to handle. So what you need to do when you get this, and when you're done, is to go down to apply UV set. Without this one actually doesn't have any UV map yet. So if I go apply UV set, okay, and then you gotta wait. And once it's done, you can export it. There we go. So now it actually has UVs. So what we will do is go to the export objects and textures, click off the textures because you don't have any, and then you just click there, find a file name and a place, and click export, and it's done. Now you can import it into your other programs, whatever you like. So that is about the basics of it. Now you have a lot more, few more commands here that you can use as well. Most of them are like packing tools and detection of intersections, etc. But there's quite a lot of handy things to do. Now, the things that it's not good at, it's that you can't really manipulate the actual mesh while you're doing this. And this is, of course, a bit annoying. In Maya, for instance, if you were doing this and you found that there was a polygon that looked bad, maybe some crisscrossing or something like that, you can actually just delete it and put on some new polygons and reproject the UVs, etc. You don't really have the option here. What you can do is you can jump into the tweak room. At the moment, I think the tweak room is not working properly. I don't know what's going on here. Usually you would get like a toolbar and stuff, but then you can do some smoothing and some little sculpting and things like that to ease a few creased edges and things like that. But I'm sure it's going to work at some point again. But right now in this version, there should have been a toolbar here. But I can't see it. So that's That's so. But otherwise, what is best to do if you find you have some corrupt polygons, some kind of weird loops that you need to change, just collect all of them at some point, apply the UVs and get them into your favorite 3D model or fix them there. And then you can either bring them back, or you can, it would be probably be easy enough to do the final UVing in an external program. But that is the thing that 3DCoat is not good at. It's like the traditional modeling with vertices and fusing and that kind of thing. But okay, let's take a look at a different type of mesh, a mesh that you often get from photogrammetry that's full of triangles. And here we go. We have a 2 million polygon mesh here, so that would consider that to be pretty dense. Now, when I've tried it before, I could get up to around 8 million and still work with it. If I would go higher than that, I would run into all kinds of problems. So I do not recommend that. I think around 1 million is pretty good. So you still have to employ working in levels, so to speak, in sculpt levels, like the ones you have in ZBrush, where this would be the low, and then you subdivide it to get more detail in. So this would still be the base layer of the whole thing. If you need more than 1 million, let's say often you have like a 40 million high-res poly model that you want to get UVs on. So this would be the way. You export something that is around 1 million, and then you subdivide it in ZBrush. Okay, with that said, be careful not to use anything else than the UV path. These tools here are all going to be too slow and going to drive you nuts. And then you can also click off the maximize straightness and just go with this tool like this. And then it's just a matter of starting to cut. And this is really, really nice. It's super fluid for what you're actually doing, just cutting up a very, very dense mesh like this. Let's see if we can find the end here. So let's say we make some kind of a loop. Now the last point you do before you connect these is you have to put it down, hold it down, and then drag it over. Then it makes a connection. Then you press enter. That's not return, that's enter on your numerical keyboard. And you see you get a little point here. That means that that's your new starting point. If you don't want that, you can just click X to clear the whole thing. So that's a good start. And now it's just a matter of cutting your way through the whole thing. So as you can see, it's extremely effective. But it can also be very tedious. There's nothing automatic about this process. It's just you and a pair of scissors going at it. But you have absolutely full control, and it works really nice. Let's see, I must have missed a tiny piece there. Yeah, one polygon missed. So I need to close the loops. There we go. So for these kind of high-res meshes, this is just the absolute best. There is certain photogrammetry meshes that you just can't remesh in a nice way and get quads out of it. And you are stuck with this because if they are very detailed, have lots of roots and all kinds of things, you want to preserve that. And sometimes the only way to preserve it is to have a high poly tri-mesh, just like this. And it actually works perfectly fine as well. I do prefer a nice little remeshed quad mesh though, because it's a lot cleaner and faster to work with. The biggest drawback with these tri-meshes, it's not that it's a tri-mesh or that there's a lot of polygons. It's that when you're cleaning it up, it's so easy that you get errors in the mesh. You get like these strange loops and things, and they will cause problems, but you can't, they're really hard to detect, so you won't detect them until you've been working quite a long time doing the UV map and the sculpting and everything, and then you go like, oh no, there's a whole patch there that's completely corrupt. What am I going to do now? So then you have to start fixing that. But that's mostly the drawback, I think, or else there's not really any quality drawbacks or anything like that. So this could actually be a much faster way to work in many scenarios than to go the whole remeshing route in ZBrush. But okay, so I just keep on going like this. I think you get the point. And let's just hit it there. And then once, as soon as I'm done getting this all into little pieces, I just hit the unwrap button. I can't do it now because I got too few pieces, and this big block here would take a long time to unwrap just to become like a garbled mess. So what I usually would do to handle an object like this is to begin with a larger scale, just unwrap the big things there, not thinking that it should necessarily look nice when you unwrap it, but you just need the big chunks. And then you work your way down. You have a big chunk, and then you go in and refine and refine and refine until you get a very nice UV layout. But that is the 3DCoat UV tools, and I think they've done a marvelous job getting this done. This is actually what I've always wanted in UV tools. Now there are a few minor issues here and there that could be improved, and I hope it continues to improve. But as it is now, I can't think of any other UV unwrapping tool that's better than this for this kind of work. Let's say photogrammetry work. There might be others when you're dealing more with hard surfaces, cars and stuff like that. But for organic photogrammetry meshes like this, it's just fantastic. So I suggest you give it a try, and as you saw, it's really easy. It's just a few commands that you need to know, and then you're off to the races, and you can start unwrapping all your photogrammetries. All right, I'm going to get back to work. Got many trees to make for my Fanal Forest project. I just thought I'd take a little break and introduce you to these 3D tools. So this is something I'm going to do in the future as well. I'm just going to make little mini tutorials as I work and show you what I'm doing, just because I think it could be fun. They are really fun to do, and I hope you can learn a little bit how I am working and get some best practices and maybe get some tips into your own workflow. Anyways, I hope to see you around next time.